Hello, you're watching Business Live at the moment, but we're bringing you breaking news with me, Jane Secker. There is a real problem with air traffic control over the UK's skies at the moment. NATS, which is the National Air Traffic Control Service, has released a statement saying as a result of technical issues at NATS Swanwick Air Traffic Control Centre, we're limiting the number of aircraft flying in the London control area in order to ensure safety, which is always our first priority. They are apologising for any delays this may cause, and they say that their engineers are working hard to resolve the problem as quickly as possible, and they're working closely with airlines to help minimise disruption. But at this stage, they cannot say how long it will be before operations are back to normal, and they're urging travellers to check with their airline on the status of your flight. We have, though, had a statement from Gatwick Airport. They go a little further. They say a technical issue impacting NATS is affecting all outbound flights across the UK. There are currently no departures from London Gatwick while the situation is being resolved. They're working with NATS to resume flights as quickly as possible, of course. Inbound flights, though, are apparently still landing at Gatwick Airport. Passengers, again, being urged to check the status of their flights with the airline. We've approached the Department of Transport. They haven't got anything to say as either. Heathrow, we're hoping to get a statement from them very, very quickly. I think we might be able to bring you Flight Radar, which is a site which shows the number of flights travelling across the UK. So you can see these little yellow dots are all the planes. Obviously, the conglomeration that you can see, that one there, looks to be Heathrow Airport to the west of London. This is actually a still image. It is not a live image of what is going on, but it doesn't reflect the fact that no flights are taking off at the moment from London Gatwick, but potentially across all flights, all outbound flights across the UK. Several flights scheduled to arrive at UK airports, we hear, are being forced to conduct holding patterns or divert elsewhere because, of course, if planes aren't taking off on the ground, that also limits the space for these planes that are coming into land from where they are able to go. Right in the middle, of course, of holiday season. This is the peak time, the middle of the school holidays, the start of the school holidays, for people to be off taking their annual leave. So all airports are especially busy. Gatwick Airport, perhaps the busiest with holiday traffic. It is very much seen as the holiday airport for London. That is the one that is announced straight away that it has been affected by it. So let's just reiterate what we're hearing, that as a result of technical issues at the Air Traffic Control Centre at Swanwick, they are limiting the number of aircraft flying in the London control area in order to ensure safety. This is apparently affecting all outbound flights out of the UK. It appears that all outbound flights out of the UK have been grounded. We are now hearing that engineers have restored the system that was affected this afternoon. That has just come through. They are in the process of resuming normal operations in the area, but at the same time, Heathrow Airport says flights are also currently not departing due to air traffic control issues. So we think outbound flights grounded across the whole of the UK, but only so far statements from Gatwick and Heathrow to confirm that flights are not taking off from either of those two, the two busiest airports in the UK. Gatwick predominantly holiday traffic, Heathrow predominantly business traffic, but a huge amount of holiday flights there at the moment at this time of year. NATS say the engineers have restored the system that was affected this afternoon. That statement coming through just after 4:30. Their initial statement came at about 4:05. So there's been a half an hour period between them announcing it and between them saying that the system has now been restored. But they are now in the process of resuming normal operations in the London area. How long it will take, though, to resume those operations, it is not known, because even a small delay that we see in air traffic control has a massive knock-on effect on not only the planes that are in the air. Anyone will know if you've travelled and you miss your slot as you're coming into land, it can lead to an enormous delay. There is the secondary issue, of course, that of those planes that are in a holding pattern around the UK, a certain number will need to land. They will have a limited amount of fuel. Just to give you a little bit more information from NATS. They have now published this update. They say our engineers have now restored the system that was affected this afternoon. We're in the process of resuming normal operations in the London area. We continue to work closely with airline and airport customers to minimise disruption, and we apologise for any inconvenience this has caused. Well, let's just talk now to Alistair Rosenstein, who's a former BA pilot and an aviation analyst. Alistair, well, I was going to say this is every airport's worst nightmare. I suppose the electricity cut to Heathrow is every airport's worst nightmare, but this must be a pretty close second.
Well, yes, definitely. It's also a nightmare, of course, for the pilots who are operating the aircraft coming into land and those waiting for departure. Obviously, one needs air traffic to keep aircraft separated, and the airspace in southern England is very, very busy indeed. So with any form of outage from air traffic control, it will cause quite a few disruptions.
Well, indeed, and where we are at Sky Centre, we're just under the flight path of Heathrow, and it's every 30 to 45 seconds, isn't it, that a plane comes down here to land. Those planes are stacked up many layers higher, up over a much wider area over the whole of London. Will there be an issue that some of these planes will need to land before others will do, because they will presumably have a certain amount of fuel left?
Well, the way it works is, well, of course, all aircraft have to land as they get low on fuel. So there are certain points in the reserve fuel and diversionary fuel that all aircraft carry. When the fuel level gets to below a certain point, then the flight crew will make a emergency call, which is called a pan call, to declare a fuel emergency. And that can be raised to a mayday call if they're very short of fuel. It's unlikely that any aircraft in this case will reach that point, but there will be aircraft that will have to be given priority, just as you say.
Why might it be that Nat's saying that the problem is with outgoing planes and not incoming planes?
Well, incoming planes have got to land because they'll be short of fuel. And if they have, airspace control problems because air traffic's out, then those aircraft are on the ground. They're perfectly safe, so they can stay on the ground until the air traffic control problem's been resolved, and then they can resume normal flights with delays, obviously.
Of course, the planes that are coming into land that have to land, they also need space at the stands, don't they? So the planes that are on the ground very often will need to take off before the planes that are in the air can land.
That's the sort of question I would expect from somebody who knows a great deal about aviation. Yes, indeed, as you say, the stand problem on the airports is a great problem. But aircraft can wait on taxiways and just off the parking areas. There are plenty of place on the ground to place aircraft, but they won't be able to disembark passengers until the stands have been vacated. And of course, if you do block all the taxiways, then it's impossible to taxi aircraft out. So it then becomes a ground movement control problem. It depends. The longer this issue lasts, then the worse the problem is. Now, I understand that they're beginning to resolve the problem, and so we're talking of a delay of 2-3 hours, something of that order. And as you quite rightly said, the aircraft are coming in about every 50 seconds, so you can see how quickly the space on the ground will fill up.
And a delay, say, of an hour or so, if it takes that long for this issue to get fully resolved, the knock-on effect of that will be hours or days for those travelling?
Well, generally, it would be hours, but there is a possibility that some flights might actually be cancelled and others move to another day. Now, I do not know the situation as it pertains right now, but that would be the worst-case scenario for some passengers.
And if we look back to August 2023, there was enormous disruption then, wasn't there? More than 700,000 passengers suffered disruption when flights were grounded, when NATS suffered a technical glitch while processing a flight plan. Just remind us about that, what caused it and what lessons were learned from that.
Well, you've actually already stated what it was. Yes, a flight plan was filed, and somehow or other it managed to cause the software in the system to grind to a complete halt. And if I remember correctly, the director of Heathrow Airport wasn't notified because it happened in the evening. I think he was asleep at the time. And so there wasn't, the man right at the top was not able to take control of the whole situation. But, when it comes to software, and I'm not a software engineer, if you do get a problem with it, it can take time to resolve. And the long lines of code that they use in these in the flight planning system. So, really, it is outside of my field of expertise. But I certainly have come across numerous problems during my flying career where computer problems have caused delays, and some very large. And in fact, going back to what you asked me earlier, I once came back from a flight from Japan, and we waited on the ground at Heathrow for 6 hours before we could get onto a parking stand. And that was another issue on the day.
And for those who are travelling, if their flights get cancelled because of air traffic control, that's outside the airline's control, isn't it? So the bad news for those travelling potentially means that they won't get any compensation unless they pursue it through their insurer.
Now, there's a question for Simon Calder rather than for me. It is not my field.
I'm in a position to answer, as I had a flight cancelled not very long ago and got no compensation whatsoever. It was because there was an air traffic control issue. But it's going to cause enormous uncertainty, isn't it, for travellers?
Well, it is, and the other thing is that many of the travellers, in fact, will have either come in on connecting flights or travelled a long distance to get to their departure airport, so they're going to be quite tired already, and then that delays them going on to their destination. They may arrive at their destination after transport links are all closed for the night. The disruption for individuals can be quite concerning, and also cost them money.
A technical glitch was what caused the delay back in August 2023. We don't know what's caused this issue. They're calling it a technical issue. That we have no more than that. Presumably there must be a kind of old-fashioned system, pen and paper, and people making signals with their hands, as it were. What is the fallback position that NATS actually has?
Well, they have backup systems, and they also have. If they're still operating the paper strip system, then they'll know which aircraft are in their particular piece of airspace and able to land them. But I want to point out that it was announced yesterday that almost all aircraft in Russia were grounded because of a hack, a computer hack done by Ukraine. So what's happened today, in a way, mirrors a little bit of what happened in Russia yesterday.
That's very interesting, isn't it? And we don't know whether a cyber attack is to blame here, but we certainly know that there have been cyber attacks on UK security infrastructure in the past, and things like the NHS, as well as things like supermarkets like Marks and Spencer's has had an enormous problem with it, hasn't it? So it's not beyond the realms of possibility, although, of course, we don't know anything about whether that might be a cause at all in this stage. So if you're just joining us, let's just remind viewers the situation that we are seeing. The National Air Traffic Service have released a statement saying that as a result of a technical issue at NATS Swanwick Air Traffic Control Centre, they're limiting the number of aircraft flying in the London control area in order to ensure safety, which is always our first priority. From Gatwick Airport, we have heard that a technical issue is affecting all outbound flights across the UK. It is also affecting Heathrow Airport. They have suspended all outbound flights from Heathrow. So the two big London airports, Heathrow and Gatwick, no outbound flights, no departures while the situation is being resolved. In the last few moments, NATS have also released a second statement saying that they think that they have managed to resolve They've restored the system that was affected this afternoon and are in the process of resuming normal operations in the London area. Well, let's bring in our correspondent, Alice Porter, who joins me now. And Alice, this will be causing absolute chaos right in the middle of the key summer holiday getaway time.
Yeah, that's right, Jane. I mean, it goes without saying there are thousands of flights that come into the country and indeed out of it every day. And to have, in particular, the London airport so badly affected is something that's going to be impacting not only holiday makers, but of course, businessmen and women as well. But we also know that this is something that's not just impacting the London area. That's what we were hearing initially. But as you were just saying there, this is something we've also been hearing from Edinburgh, from Manchester Airport as well, where they're all going to be impacted. We have heard an update, though, from NATS, though, in the last 5 minutes or so, which does suggest that their engineers are bringing the situation under control. This is the National Air Traffic Services. So obviously they are the body that control all the air traffic. And they say that their engineers have now restored the system that was affecting them this afternoon. And they're in the process of resuming normal operations in the London area. And they're going to be working closely with airlines. I mean, there may well be a significant knock-on of other airports if any of those planes have to be diverted. But this is, of course, going to be something that's going to hit a number of airlines and passengers as well, to have a situation that initially we were hearing was affecting the London area. This was Gatwick Airport, who said a technical issue impacting NATS is affecting all outbound flights across the UK. So this took this from being something that was initially seen to be something that was within the London area, but has in fact impacted airports across the country. And this is something that is going to take some time to bring under control in many respects. That this is going to take a little bit of time before the situation settles, and it will of course be a huge concern for people who are taking those flights. And we understand airlines are urging passengers who are due to be departing to make sure that they check with their airline. But this is something that's happened within the last 40 minutes or so. It's been a very quick moving story, and of course the updates really just keep coming on it. We understand so departures are also being held in Edinburgh. So again, giving the scale there of how many different parts of the United Kingdom have been affected by it. And we understand that all outbound flights in the UK are being affected. That is according to Gatwick there. And I think the map that you may be able to see on the screen there really shows how many flights are being affected. And there's thousands of flights, of course, leave from UK airports and indeed fly in to the UK. So to have NATS, which is the body, the national body, to be the ones that they are controlling it, to have it so badly affected for a significant period of time, it is going to have something that's going to impact not only businesses, but of course passengers as well.
Well, indeed, Alice, yeah, massive impact on businesses, on passengers and on those going on their holidays and coming back from their holidays. Just looking at some further information that we're getting from the X website, the London CTA, which is the London control area, seems to be the main area that's affected. And they're saying that Heathrow is likely to be the most impacted by this at the moment. Let's bring in aviation and tourism consultant Anita Durata. Very good to talk to you today, Anita. What impact are you hearing about this having?
Oh, it's remarkable. If you look at actually aviation and how the ecosystem works, what's very important about this is recognizing the density of demand of this airspace in London. So if we're looking at it from the point of view of London Heathrow, there are an estimated 1,400 aircraft movements every single day, about 900 at Gatwick itself. And in terms of departures, we're looking at Heathrow at 700. Now, importantly, this airspace, as we know, is vital in the global ecosystem because of the amount of traffic it has coming in across the UK, across Europe, and across the world. So when there is an issue like a data error that's coming through, it impacts all of those connection points with European air traffic control and international. So that's why the caution that's been demonstrated is important so that we can enable the stacking of aircraft that might have to wait until the problem is identified and resolved. So the fact that we're already seeing air traffic movement in London is quite exceptional, which means any speculation of there might have been an alternative problem and what was really the thinking behind that needs to be kept at bay. The experts are working on this, and thankfully the aviation community is formed of some of the smartest minds in the world, and they know the implications of delay. So it's very good to see that we do have some air traffic movement already.
Yeah, the update from NATS is that our engineers have now restored the system that was affected this afternoon, and that they are in the process of resuming normal operations in the London area. But even if it's just delays, the knock-on effect is huge, isn't it? There will likely be cancellations.
Absolutely. It's staggering from the point of view of both passengers, but also cargo, because we have to recognize the impact of those global supply chains. So I think what's really critical now is, again, recognizing from a passenger point of view, the need to gain as much information as possible. There are conditions that are enabling passengers to be supported if it's after 3 hours of delay or cancellation. But right now, at this moment, it's really about taking a deep breath, standing back, and allowing this to be resolved by the technical expertise behind NATS and behind European air traffic control as well. So it's find out what we can, go to the airline websites, keep an eye on the news, but anyone's increasing tempers does not help the situation right now.
Let's just look at the images, Anita, while we talk to you to the left of the screen. This is flight radar. What we've done is we've speeded up the last 24 hours so you can see how many planes are normally moving around the UK and around the London area. And then you can see that it just sort of peters away, the numbers, and you can see how many are on the ground, how few are taking off, and then just a very, very small number left to holding patterns and also travelling to different areas. You can see sort of leaving. I mean, that's quite extraordinary, isn't it, Anita?
It is amazing. And that's why, again, exactly as I mentioned earlier, again, the density of activity that we have in London. We're blessed to be one of the most important airports in the world and airport environments in the world. So not just only Heathrow, but we saw back in April with the closure of Heathrow in one day, the impact that this had. And that's where, again, it's about the ecosystem. So the problem was air traffic control, but it impacts airlines, it impacts airports, because exactly as you say, the diversion's taking place, and it impacts passengers and cargo movement. So there's enormous complexity here. And with your accelerating the movement of aircraft on the screen right now, it shows, again, just how important Heathrow and the London airspace is as a whole, and why it's so important when it's air traffic control that all of those other alternative airports are notified as quickly as possible to be able to divert. What does that do to passengers? It puts them in a very difficult position. But that's why manage the landings now and delay the departures so we can deal with some of that backlog and try to get people back to where they need to be as quickly as possible.
Anita Menduriata, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for giving us your expertise. From experts, let's talk to somebody who's down there at the sharp end. Craig Slater, Sky Sports F1 correspondent. He's stuck on the tarmac at Heathrow. He joins us on the phone. Craig, what have you been told?
Well, I'm one of the lucky ones. That's the first thing to say. We are actually taxiing out now. We've come to a halt, but we're in a queue of aircraft about to take off. We were due to take off at 3:30 this afternoon. So ultimately, not such a bad delay, but we were on the brink of being disembarked from the plane. It was overheating, particularly at the back of this plane. The air conditioning systems inadequate to keep up with the sort of rising temperatures, and lots of small children on board as well. But just as we were being told to disembark, we got the good news that we would be towards the front of the queue to take off. And by the way, the captain had instructed us that there were 79 planes queuing to take off at Heathrow. So at that point, when he gave us that information, I think a few of us on board here were concerned that we were not going to get to Budapest this evening. And quite a few of Lewis Hamilton's team on board this plane. We've got members of staff from other Formula One teams. So for that event in particular, disruption for them.
How long were you in this, stuck on the tarmac, unsure about what was happening while the plane was slowly warming from the inside out?
Well, about an hour, ultimately. What are we now? an hour and a half, I suppose, now, ultimately. But we're beginning to make our way towards the runway itself as I speak. So we've had the safety briefing and everything else, so it looks like we're getting underway. But it was a concerning time, particularly for those with young families on board, and there are a couple of them on this plane. So I think they were looking to do the right thing by them and disembark the passengers to wait on further information. But I suppose that's also interesting here, that on occasion, when I've been in a situation like that with a delay, at least you know the length of the delay. What was striking here was that there was no real idea when the airport would be able to function again properly. Okay. But I have seen a couple of planes take off, and now we are getting into a position to do the same. But yeah, there's quite a backlog.
I'm going to let you go because we're running out of time, and I'm sure the pilot wants you to turn up and phone off. Great to talk to you, though. Lots more on this developing story with Mark Austin after this short break.
Let's speak to Sky's Alice Porter. And Alice, some good news, because it appears that the system failure that caused this has been restored.
Yes, that's right. I mean, it's extraordinary to think we first had this announcement less than an hour ago. This has come from NATS, which is the National Air Traffic Services, that they were experiencing a technical problem where they're based at their centre in Southampton. Now, initially, they thought that this was only impacting flights within the London area. And we then, very shortly after that, had a confirmation from Gatwick that this was, in fact, impacting all outbound services across the UK. And in fact, they said that there are currently no departures from London Gatwick. And then what happened after that was a series of other airports also confirming that their flights, their outbound flights in particular, were being affected. We heard from Edinburgh, we heard from Manchester, and in the last 10 minutes or so, we've also heard from Stansted. Now, whilst the focus has been on outbound flights, it's of course having a knock-on effect as well, and that we know that some airports are also reporting that inbound flights have also been affected. I think you can see from the map there on your screen how this has severely impacted our airspace, which normally would be, particularly around London, you would normally be experiencing thousands of incoming flights and outgoing flights every day. So it's extraordinary to have this happen so quickly. And there are still many questions. We don't know exactly what the technical problem was in the first place, and we don't know how long the delays will be for passengers up and down the country. In the last half hour, we were hearing from somebody who was at one of the London airports, I believe it was Heathrow, who said that there were 79 flights in front of them, ahead of them, waiting to take off. So it really gives a sense there of people who may be stranded at various airports, who are on the tarmac, waiting for their flights to go off. It really gives a sense there of the knock-on impact at individual airports, but also not only across the country, across the world as well. I mean, if we look at Heathrow, for example, it's Europe's busiest airport. So to be having a situation where international flights are not able to land, that is going to be having an impact across different airports as well. And I think you can see from on the screen there at one of the airports, which shows that some of the flights that are there, that is Gatwick, with some of the flights, I think EasyJet flights that you can see there that are currently grounded, unable to take off. Gatwick, again, one of the UK's busiest airports, right by London, and there'll be a lot of not only holiday makers as well, but businesses as well. Many people who will be expecting to get their flights urgently for business, as well as this being peak holiday season, with many holiday makers who will be frustrated that they are unable to get to their flights or having delays for their flights that are coming in or coming out. But there is good news, because less than an hour when we had this announcements from NATS, they said that their engineers were working hard to try and resolve the issue. We heard from them in the last sort of 10-15 minutes or so. We heard from them saying that the issue had been resolved, but of course is still going to be having quite significant delays.
Yes, and thank you very much indeed. We've just had, we've heard on X from the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, who says, I'm aware of a technical issue which impacted NATS operations, causing travel disruption this afternoon. I've been informed systems have now been restored, but continued disruption is expected, and passengers should check with individual airports for advice. And just to recap this statement from Britain's biggest airport, Heathrow, says this: flights at Heathrow have resumed following a technical issue at NATS Swanwick Air Traffic Control Centre. NATS being the National Air Traffic System. We are advising passengers to check with their airline before travelling. We apologise for any inconvenience caused. So what appears to be happening right now is that planes are leaving certainly the main London airports, and also reports that planes are now leaving other airports too. But the question now is going to be these delays. Let's bring in Paul Charles, travel expert and chief executive of the PC agency. Good afternoon, Paul. Good to talk to you. Well, it's not what's needed on a midsummer afternoon.
No, this is one of the busiest days at the end of July. It's when a lot of families are travelling to go on holiday. So 3,080 departures were due to take off today from the UK, according to Cirium, who crunched this data. That equates to roughly 570,000 passengers. And that's just outbound from the UK. It's a similar number who would be due to come into the UK today. And you can tell that this is a major outage because I'm here in central London and there isn't one plane in the sky above me. Normally I'd be sitting here and I would see a plane going past certainly every 20 to 30 seconds. So NATS may have restored air traffic control, but it's going to take some hours to get operations anything like back to normal.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about how long. It's very difficult to say, isn't it? But certainly a backlog and delays, and possibly because of planes being out of place now, cancellations, do you think?
Yes, I mean, typically you'd be looking at 2 to 3 hours. It may be longer due to the volume of flights which are due to take off this evening for the rest of the evening. But it's a very stressful experience if you're a passenger affected by this. You will be stuck at the airport wondering when your flight is going to go. The air traffic controllers obviously will be prioritizing how they restore flights. Which ones do they give priority to? Long-haul traffic above short-haul traffic usually, because those long-haul aircraft are carrying more passengers. So they will try to protect those longer flights more than the short-haul ones. And of course, there are many flights that would have been in the air at the time of this outage. And they will be diverted to other airports around Europe, specifically Amsterdam, airports in Paris, possibly Dublin, who would be taking in those passengers who will be turning up at the wrong airport.
Yeah, so you can see a disruption for quite some considerable time. I guess people will be saying an air traffic control failure like this, temporary though it was, a fire at a substation which closed Heathrow for, 24 hours or so. What's going on with our airport infrastructure?
It's a very good question. The resilience is under strain. The systems are not invested in well enough. Despite calls for major investment over the years, the investment simply has not been there. Yes, NATS have some questions to answer around the software they're using. What has caused this particular issue? Was it the same issue that caused the outage 2 years ago on that bank holiday when, again, so many thousands of people were affected and so many flights cancelled and delayed? Undoubtedly, NATS will need to give some answers very quickly to the Transport Secretary and the Select Committee on Transport to prove that it really knows what's going on. This happens too often. It shouldn't be happening. The national air traffic infrastructure is equivalent to the fourth emergency service. So many people rely on the NATS air traffic control system to get them safely to and from A to B, and not just passengers, but military, all sorts of other services, cargo and freight, that it is an emergency service. So if its software is not up to scratch and up to date, then questions do need to be asked about how much is being invested in it.
I'm not sure it amused the passengers on an EasyJet flight I'm just reading about, but the pilot apparently said, well, we're on the move again. They switched the system off and on. I mean, there will be people on aircraft about to go on holidays who may get delayed overnight, who won't see the funny side. I mean, presumably there'll have to be some sort of, another investigation into all this.
Yes, I mean, obviously for pilots who are used to unpredictable situations, then they'll know that they're told one piece of information and it can change quite rapidly as systems go on and offline. But for passengers, it's deeply distressing. And my advice all the time, whether you're stuck on a plane or in the airport, is to remain calm if you can. I know it's not easy, but the best thing to do is to remain calm, because there will be many people involved, both at NATS, air traffic control, and in the airlines themselves, whose job is to sort this as quickly as possible. And actually, a 2 to 3 hour delay is not as bad as it could be if it ends up being that. You could have your flight cancelled. That would be a worse situation. But I suspect in the majority of cases tonight, most people will be delayed 2 to 3 hours leaving the UK and coming into the UK.
Paul, appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. And of course, we'll keep you updated on those delays and the scale of those delays. But